everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today we are talking about all of the crafted spells in Wizard101, all of the lore spells, how to craft them, where to get all the reagents, whatnot. And I just want to start out this video by saying I worked really hard on this video. This spreadsheet took me like 3.5+ hours to make. So if you found it useful or if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you dropped a like and hit the sub button. If not, that's fine too. Now, before I get into this video, I just want to start off by saying a PSA for literally everyone out there. If you're looking to craft these spells, just be prepared for the fact that it takes a lot of reagents and it's not easy. And honestly, you would be much better off just farming for the spell elements from the different gold skeleton key bosses throughout the spiral rather than actually crafting them. If you're crafting them, I'm going to assume it's because you already have a lot of reagents or you don't have a lot of gold skeleton keys and you don't feel like completing all the side quests to do. I am going to say this is going to take longer, so the only reason why you would do this is if you prefer the crafting system over just like farming for spell elements. But again, if you're going like and killing Baron von Bracken 15 times for the Pigsy spell elements, it's going to be way faster than actually crafting the spell. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, first off, there are 2 requirements for actually crafting spells in this game. First off, you need to be a legendary crafter. Legendary crafter means Zafaria crafting. So you need to complete the first 7 worlds of crafting before you can craft any spells in this game. So if you're before Zafaria, if you're like a level 20 and you're wanting to know how to craft these spells, you can't for another like 5 worlds. On top of that, to actually craft the cards themselves, you need a card crafting station and to actually buy the spell recipe. I'll show you where to get the spell recipes, but you get card crafting stations from basically the first few furniture shops in the game. I think from Crocotopia up to Dragonspire. I personally use the one in Mushu just because it's right there out of the spiral gate. You walk to the furniture shop, you buy a card crafting station, and you can craft spells at it. All right, so the first of the 2 spell recipe vendors is here in Shirataki Temple. You have to complete most of the quests up to the point where you can actually walk into this temple. It's not most of the quests, but it is a few of the quests to get up to the point where you can, come and interact with this guy. And you can see he has a few of the spell recipes. I would say he only has like 6 out of like the 23 total. So the other spell recipe vendor is going to be having way more. Master Yankan Kook here has Brimstone Revenant, Goat Monk, Keeper of the Flame, Krampus, Luminous Weaver, Ninja Pig, and Samurai. And he also has the Krampus treasure card if you want to get them for the actual Krampus spell themselves. Now, I gotta say, I have quite a few reagents on this character. I did not realize I had this many reagents, but this is the main way to get all of these spells. Now let me go show you guys the other vendor. I just want to say while I'm walking here, man, it takes a long time to get to both of these. It took me like 10 minutes to get to the Shirataki Temple guy, and it's going to take me another like 4 or 5 minutes to get to this guy in the weird. It's like kind of insane, actually. I went the wrong way. This is devastating. All right, so the next spell recipe vendor is in the weird in Avalon, right by the entrance of Dundara, the Indigo Giant. His lair called Dunscaith. Grady, you can see him in the back there, is the next guy, and he will show up the second you beat the Indigo Giant. I believe I can just walk around him so I don't have to fight him again. Perfect. And I can interact with him. Now, he has the vast majority of spells. I mentioned in the last recipe vendor section, I talked about the fact that he only had like 7 of them or so. This guy has like the remaining 20 that you can buy. Now you can see that the recipes vary from costing between 60,000 and 12,000. I don't know why some are 60 and some are 20, but that's fine. It is what it is. Honestly, not bad. I could craft Ratsbane if I had the TCs. My reagent pool is pretty dang good on this wizard, but I digress. Now let's get into the section of the video where I talk about how to get most of the reagents for these. And I will say, I worked really hard on this. Again, I just want to reiterate that. So I would appreciate it if, you dropped a like or at the very least sub. That would be very nice of you. All right, so here we are. This is the Kaiser Noah magnum opus of spreadsheets. This spreadsheet, again, took me like 3.5 hours to make, and I put a lot of effort into it. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. First off, the crafted spell guide. Again, you must be a legendary crafter. Recipes are from Master Yankan Kook in Shirataki Temple and Grady in the weird Dunscaith. First off, let me just say something about this. If you can find the Blacksmith Fjord in like daily castle tours, or if you can actually buy it yourself, which it is a bundle house, using the daily reagent reward thing there, like I think it's the forge, will be very useful for this video because it drops a lot of rare reagents and it can drop amber, which all of these recipes take amber, which is not necessarily an easy reagent to get. Also, for these spells, use transmute spells. Transmute spells are bought from basically every recipe vendor throughout the spiral, throughout like the main quest line, like the crafting masters. Use the transmute spells to get some of these reagents, because otherwise it is going to be next to impossible. Now, before I get into this, let me say a few things. First off, I'm not going to go over all of these recipes because otherwise it is going to take like 30 minutes and no one's going to want to watch it. So I'm just going to go from the different spells. I'm going to talk about each of them and what they do, and I'm going to maybe highlight a few difficult ones, like very difficult, but they're all difficult. Before I get into that, let's talk about the common reagents that you're going to need for literally all of them. First off, all of these spells require amber. I've personally found that the best way to get amber beyond the Blacksmith Fjord is to farm Cronus in Tartarus. Now, the reason why I say Cronus, a lot of people usually farm the Sand Squid. I find Cronus drops it just as much as the Sand Squid, and on top of that, Cronus is also a significantly easier boss than the Sand Squid. So I'd recommend Cronus in Tartarus, but if you want, you can farm the Sand Squid in Atlantia instead. On top of that, all of these recipes require Sunstone, and Sunstone, if you can pick up a large amount of it in the Bazaar, go for it, but otherwise, picking up Sandstone throughout Stone Town and Zafaria, and then also like throughout Mirage, if you transmute that, you can get a Sunstone. I think that's going to be the best way to get it. Otherwise, again, the Bazaar is going to be your friend for this, and that rings true really for all of the reagents. If you can find these reagents in the Bazaar, just buy them up en masse, because like one man's trash is your treasure, you know? Like someone sold those reagents either not knowing what they are or they had too many of them, whatever. For you, it's going to be very, very useful to buy them. So first off, if you come to the bottom of the spreadsheet, it's cut off here for some reason because I don't know how to crop successfully in OBS, but at the very bottom of the screen below my mouse here, there is different tabs that you can click on to view all of the spells. From all of the spells, you can click on the different reagents and the different headings to see the recipe and all of the reagents. So if you don't trust something I said here, like if you don't trust one of these sources, you can click on it yourself, open up the wiki page, and then scroll through yourself and figure out what would be the best for you. Because A, I'm not the master of this. I'm not going to spend hundreds of hours making the spreadsheet to find every best way to get these reagents. These are my opinion on the best way to get the reagents. I'm sure some people have much better ways out there. If you do, leave it in comments below, but these are going to be the best ways in my opinion on how to get them. Someone might find a different way or find something much easier for them and they'll do that instead. You can just click on this, open it up, look throughout the wiki, find who drops it or how you can get it, and you might do that instead. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with Fire. Fire has 3 spells with Brimstone Revenant, Hephaestus, and Krampus. Realistically, I wouldn't recommend crafting any of these. They all kind of suck as spells, and the recipes are not easy to do. Brimstone Revenant has the problem of diamonds, which are really annoying to get, because if you transmute ore, you can get one, but otherwise, like, it's really rare to get them. Hephaestus has 60 black pearls, which kind of sucks, and the 60 astral shards, which kind of sucks. And then finally, Krampus requires 50 black pearls as well and 60 astral shards. They're basically the same recipes, Hephaestus and Krampus. I wouldn't really recommend crafting any of these, but if you want to, the recipes are here and you can look at them and, you know, click on them and find where to get all of the reagents. Next up, we have Ice, which has Angry Snow Pigs, Handsome Fomori, and Winter Moon. I would say Angry Snow Pigs is going to be a really hard spell to craft because it requires 40 silver, which if you don't get in the Bazaar is just going to be a rare drop from most enemies in the game. I found that Arc 2 enemies, specifically Grim Kalakas, drop them. Arc 1 enemies do not really drop silver at all. Handsome Fomori requires 100 diamonds, which sucks. And then Winter Moon requires 50 Grendel Wheat and 25 turquoise, which if you can't get in the Bazaar is going to be really annoying to get for both of these. Really, I don't really recommend crafting any of the ice spells as well because they're not anything particularly useful. Next up is Storm, which has Catalan, Hammer of Thor, and Queen Calypso. For Catalan, the water lilies are going to be pretty annoying to get, which you can get from transmuting cattails, which are basically everywhere, but like getting the water lilies is going to take a long time. Hammer of Thor requires silver as well, which I went over why that's difficult. The Comet Tails you can just get around Chrysalis Part 2 if you want, wouldn't be too hard. And then Queen Calypso is going to suck probably one of the most out of most of these because it requires 120 blood moths and 60 springs, which are going to be really annoying to get as well. Myth has 4 spells with Athena Battlesight, Grendel's Amends, Keeper of the Flame, and Ninja Pigs. Athena Battlesight requires 60 Grendelweed and 40 turquoise and 60 scrap iron. Those are going to be annoying. I went over how to get those. Grendel's Amends is going to be like probably one of the most annoying spells you can craft because it requires Flying Squid Ink and 150 diamonds. I went over the diamonds, but Flying Squid Ink is a rare reagent drop in Imperia. I found that the boss Devis drops it not often, but he's probably going to be the easiest one you can do to get Flying Squid Ink. Otherwise, just hope you get lucky in the bazaar. For Keeper of the Flame, the 120 blood moss can suck. Otherwise, it's probably one of the easier recipes to craft. And then finally, Ninja Pigs, the 40 golden pearls is going to be annoying because you can only really get those from transmuting pearls, but you might find some in the bazaar and get lucky for that. Next up, we have the life section, which also has 4 spells. This is probably going to be the section that most people want to know how to do because actually crafting these is going to be very useful to most people. There's Goat Monk, Luminous Weaver, Pigsy, and Rat Spin. And Pigsy and Rat Spin are obviously very, very good spells. For Goat Monk, the Grendelweed and Fish Fin and Springs are going to be annoying. For Luminous Weaver, the Water Lilies and Fish Fins are going to be annoying. And for those, realistically, I told you how to get Water Lilies, but the Fish Fins, get them from the bazaar if you can. Otherwise, a bunch of Celestia bosses drop them. Now, finally, we have Pigsy and Rat Spin, which are going to be things that people really want to know how to craft. These are going to suck. These recipes just really suck because for Pigsy, you need 150 gold pearls, which is just annoying. You can get them from the bazaar. Most of these reagents you can get from the bazaar, actually, so Pigsy might not be that bad, but the treasure cards themselves are going to be annoying to get. And then finally, Rat Spin is probably, I would argue it's probably the worst recipe in the entire game because you need 150 agave nectar, which, man, that sucks. You can get agave leaves in Mangrove Marsh and then transmute them, but otherwise, like, you're gonna be wanting to get this from the bazaar. And then 225 iron. Good luck, buddy. You're not getting that from farming mobs. Biddy Narini drops it in Croc, and a lot of the Croc bosses drop it. Farming 225 iron will probably take you days and days and days of time. If you can find it in the bazaar, please just buy it from the bazaar because farming this is going to be probably one of the worst experiences of your life, and it's going to be worse than actually farming for a full set of gear. That's how bad it's going to be to farm 225 iron. Next up, we have Death, and this is probably also going to be something that people want to know, is Deer Knight. Now, Deer Knight is difficult for the Blood Moss and the Springs. I went over how to get those. Red Mandrake is, again, found throughout Nightside and Sunken City and Chrysalis Part 1, and the Springs are in the counterweights. Otherwise, this recipe is not that bad to craft, to be honest. And then we have Lord of Night, which is a pretty useless spell, but if you want to craft it, it requires 50 Nightshade, which you can get from transmuting Deep Mushroom, and then turning 25 turquoise, which you can get from the bazaar as well. And then otherwise, the rest of the recipe is pretty easy to craft. Finally, we have the balance section, which has Lore Master, Ninja Piglets, Samurai, and Savage Paw. And just to quickly go over these, because I want to stop talking about these spells now, the 50 fossils for Savage Paw is going to be annoying. If you transmute Stone Block, it's not going to be that bad, which you can get from the Shadow Palace and Dragonspire. Samurai as a spell, honestly, isn't that bad to craft out of all of them. It's not the worst. Ninja Piglets is going to be one of the worst, and if you craft this, you're literally insane because it also requires 225 iron, but it also requires Blood Moss, Cobalt, Black Lotus. Like, this spell sucks. If you craft Ninja Piglets, 07 to you, because I would never in my life. And then finally, Lore Master, 50 Agave Nectar. I went over how to get that mainly from Azteca. Ancient Scrolls, you can transmute Parchment from Croc to get them, and otherwise the rest of the spell is pretty easy. All right, real quick, before I wrap up this video and talk about whether the spells are worth getting, you might have noticed that I didn't mention treasure cards at any point up until this, and that's because realistically, 90% of these treasure cards, the best way to get them is from the Skeleton Key boss that just also drop spell elements for the spells. So I didn't include any of those bosses because I figured that if you're going to craft it anyway, the amount of time it's going to take you to farm that gold key boss to get the treasure cards to actually craft the spell, it's going to take like the same amount of time as it would to get the spell elements anyway. So you're probably going to end up learning the spell trying to get the treasure cards. Realistically, otherwise, 90% of these cards all just drop from Lore Master or the Bazaar. So if you're going for the treasure cards, Lore Master and Bazaar is going to be the way to go because otherwise, most of them don't drop from other bosses. Like Brimstone Revenant can drop from the Bog Witch, Krampus can drop from Krampus during holidays, Fomori Giant can drop from the Indigo Giant, and some of these do have other methods of drop, but like Deer Knight and Pigsy and Rat Spin, the ones that are really important, really the only place you can get them from is Lore Master. So getting them from anywhere that's not the Bazaar or Lore Master is just going to be getting the spell elements anyway, which is why I didn't mention the treasure cards up until this point. So ask yourself in your head if you want to actually craft these or if you want to just take the easy way out and just get the spell elements. But otherwise, let's get into, are they worth actually crafting? So now that I went over generally like the standout reagents, let's just quickly wrap up this video with, is it worth it to craft any of these? And the hard answer is pretty much no. I would say that out of all of them, Deer Knight is probably going to be the one you want to craft the most because obviously Death doesn't have an AoE, it is useful as an AoE, and honestly as a recipe, it's not that hard to craft compared to some of these other ones. Realistically, Rat Spin and Pigsy are going to be the other spells that most people want to craft, but these spells really suck to craft. If you can, please just farm Spellament bosses instead, because farming Spellament bosses like farming Baron von Bracken and King Boar is going to be a much better use of your time. It's just gonna suck if you actually try to craft the spell itself. So I wouldn't really recommend crafting any of these spells besides those three. Yeah, the rest of these spells are not useful enough to justify the reagent cost. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Hopefully you guys appreciate the time I put into this. Again, it took me like 3 hours to do, and you know, linking all of these hopefully is going to be useful to someone out there in knowing how to craft all the spells in Wizard 101. But that's it for today. If you enjoyed, please drop a like at the sub button. If you appreciate the time I put in, please do the same. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a fantastic day.